headlines of this hour on VTV News. We continue to report on damage caused by Typhoon Yagi. And Ministry of National Defense General Department of Technology celebrates 50th Traditional Day. In our world news, Harris and Trump to face off in U.S. presidential debate.
Broadcasting from Hanoi, the capital of Vietnam. VTV News starts right now.
Good morning. It is 8 a.m. local time in Hanoi, and you're watching VTV News. I'm Nguyen with the top stories. Northern Vietnam is currently facing its worst flooding in 60 years due to prolonged heavy rains. Provinces such as Lao Cai, Cao Bằng, Yên Bái, Thái Nguyên, and Hanoi are severely impacted. As of September 10th, reports indicate 127 deaths, 54 missing, and over 760 injured. Tens of thousands of people are isolated and urgently need support. Among the affected areas, Lao Cai has suffered the most severe losses in terms of fatalities and missing persons. The Steering Committee for Natural Disaster Prevention and Search and Rescue of Lao Cai Province reported that a flash flood struck Nhu village in Phúc Khánh Commune, Bảo Yên District on the morning of September 10th, resulting in 15 deaths. The flash flood buried the entire village, which consisted of 35 households. Rescue teams were able to save 10 people, but more than 100 are still missing. The residents were caught completely off guard, as this area had never experienced such a disaster before. The remote location, combined with landslides, cutting off traffic and communication lines, has made rescue operations extremely challenging. Now, currently, tens of thousands of people remain isolated due to the typhoon. Flooding is expected to worsen, and immediate relief efforts are crucial as the full extent of the damage remains unclear.
The Vietnam Fatherland Front, VFF, Central Committee on Tuesday launched a campaign in support of victims of Typhoon Yagi in Hanoi, the party General Secretary and State President To Lam attending. Delivering the appeal, VFF Central Committee President Do Van Chien highlighted Yagi's widespread devastation as well as joint efforts in search and rescue operations. Party and state have earmarked resources to restore infrastructure, resume production, and help people return to normal life, and called on individuals, organizations, and businesses, both at home and abroad, play a part in this regard. At the launch ceremony, General Secretary and State President To Lam, along with party and state leaders, members of the Vietnam Fatherland Front, and heads of central ministries, departments, and businesses, made donations to support those affected by Typhoon Yagi. The Vietnam Fatherland Front received more than 16.49 million USDs from agencies, organizations, and individuals to help those affected by Typhoon Yagi. All contributions should be sent to the Central Relief Mobilization Committee's account. The account numbers for donations are displayed on the screen.
Now, on the afternoon of September 10th, in response to the damage assessment and actual conditions in affected areas, the Central Relief Mobilization Committee approved the initial phase of support for 20 localities impacted by Typhoon Yagi, or Storm Number 3. A total of 380 billion Vietnam dong, or approximately $15.4 million US, has been allocated based on the extent of the damage. Specifically, 8 provinces Lạng Sơn, Cao Bằng, Lao Cai, Yên Bái, Phú Thọ, Bắc Giang, Thái Nguyên, and Hòa Bình will each receive 30 billion Vietnam dong. Thái Bình, Hưng Yên, Hải Dương, Lai Châu, Sơn La, Điện Biên, Tuyên Quang, and Bắc Cạn will each be provided with 15 billion Vietnam dong. Additionally, Ninh Bình, Bắc Ninh, Nam Định, and Hà Giang will each receive 5 billion Vietnam dong. Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính arrived in the northern province of Bắc Giang to inspect flood control and rescue efforts as many areas in the region have been submerged by floodwaters. He emphasized the urgency of addressing the Go River's rapid rise due to upstream water inflow and stressed the need for enhanced forecasting to identify potential flood zones. These measures will ensure timely evacuations, safe accommodations, and adequate provisions for affected residents. The Prime Minister praised Bắc Giang Province and Viet Yên District for their adherence to government directives, reaffirming the commitment to ensure that no one is deprived of food, clothing, or shelter. The Prime Minister directed authorities to promptly stabilize the situation and restore normalcy. Efforts are underway to deliver food, provisions, and essentials to those stranded by the flood. Schools are to remain closed until it is safe for students to return. Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính visited Vân Hà commune in Viet Yên town, where 9,000 residents have been isolated due to floods caused by Typhoon Yagi. Local authorities also need to ensure traffic safety, especially in deeply inundated areas and areas with high risk of landslides. Now, after his field inspection of Bắc Giang Province, Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính led an online meeting with officials from Yên Bái, Tuyên Quang, Phú Thọ, Vĩnh Phúc, and Hanoi. The meeting focused on addressing the aftermath of recent floods, managing the impacts, and ensuring the safety of dams.
At the meeting, Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính urged localities affected by floods and natural disasters to implement the directives from the Politburo, General Secretary, and State President Tô Lâm from their September the 9th meeting, which focused on addressing the aftermath of floods and storms. The Prime Minister called for a comprehensive mobilization of the entire political system, stressing the need to prepare for the worst-case scenarios.
Local party committees and authorities, as well as ministries and branches, must actively address issues that arise while managing the aftermath of Typhoon Yagi, according to their specific roles and responsibilities. Their primary goal should be to ensure the safety, health, and well-being of the people. This includes preventing hunger, cold, and lack of shelter, even if temporary. Students should be able to return to school promptly, and those in need of medical care must receive treatment. These are fundamental and consistent principles that must be upheld.
For Yên Bái Province, the Prime Minister has instructed the local authorities to work closely with the army, police, and other support teams to ensure that food and necessities reach people in isolated areas. Efforts should include exploring all possible access methods, such as using air and water routes and boats, and considering alternative routes if roads are blocked. He endorsed the plan to use helicopters, weather permitting, to deliver food, dried rations, instant noodles, bread, and drinking water to isolated communities. Deputy Prime Minister Lê Thanh Long has been assigned to stay in Yên Bái to oversee flood response efforts and address related issues. The Prime Minister also requested that the provinces of Yên Bái, Tuyên Quang, Phú Thọ, Vĩnh Phúc, and Hanoi City prepare evacuation plans in case of severe situations. The chairman of the Provincial People's Committee is authorized to declare a state of emergency as needed following the proper procedures. Provinces like Lào Cai, Hà Giang, and Yên Bái should implement measures to prevent excess water flow into the Thác Bà hydropower reservoir to minimize the risk of overloading. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment is tasked with monitoring the situation and providing timely updates to relevant agencies, the media, and the public. Additionally, the Prime Minister directed relevant sectors to develop solutions to support individuals and businesses affected by the disaster.
Floodwaters from the Red River and Duong River continue to surge in Hanoi, submerging many areas of Red River's alluvial plains. As a result, thousands of local residents have been urgently evacuated starting Monday night. The electricity will be cut off to ensure no residents stay in these areas. Our report from Tuesday afternoon.
The neighborhood officers go check every small alley with a handheld speaker. Nearly 500 residents from 3 wards were urgently evacuated. According to local residents, this is the highest water level ever seen over the last 16 years.
I saw a mess after I got off work. I had never seen such a high flood before. I cried because of self-pity.
The water continues to surge. I'm very worried about property and livestock.
In many residential areas, the water has almost reached the roofs of houses along the river. Nearly 100 officers have been deployed to urgently support residents in moving belongings.
We work closely with authorities at all levels to evacuate people to safe places. Local authorities' leaders prioritize ensuring people's safety.
Hanoi has shut down the Long Bien Bridge from 3 p.m. Tuesday afternoon until further notice. Floodwater is reaching the edge of many of Hanoi's bridges, affecting the lives of thousands of residents. Local authorities are helping the locals move their belongings and leave no pets behind.
The Tuyên Quang Hydro Power Plant has closed 2 of its bottom spillways, leaving only 6 open. Efforts to deliver food and water to isolated households cut off by severe flooding, reaching depths of 8 to 10 meters in many areas, are being rapidly carried out. A report from Tuyên Quang Province.
Many areas in Chim that are heavily flooded, currently without electricity or access to clean water.
Better to lose possessions than our lives. I'm glad that we are safe. Yesterday, the water swept away my neighbor's house down the road. 3 houses collapsed, and it left me very sad. We all rushed to help them, but we could only watch.
All forces, including militia, police, youth volunteers, and capable adults gathered to help residents evacuate their family and belongings to safe places. Valuable belongings and residents are safe.
The primary concern for both emergency responders and residents is the loss of electricity and clean water. Many locals are facing severe hardships, with numerous homes submerged and their belongings swept away by the floods.
In Nahang District, home to the Tuyên Quang hydropower plant, flooding remains severe. Most downstream areas are heavily inundated, and approximately 90% of the transportation system is currently paralyzed.
Logistical resources have been prepared. Moving forward, the district committee and relevant agencies will oversee and monitor the situation to effectively respond to and support the affected individuals.
All 7 districts and cities in Tuyên Quang Province are experiencing severe flooding due to the storm circulation, which has brought heavy rain and increased the risk of landslides and flash floods. Currently, all provincial emergency services are operating around the clock to evacuate residents from flooded areas, deliver supplies to isolated communities.
Typhoon Yagi and its aftermath has caused severe damage, not only to property but also to people. Local authorities and functional forces are actively engaged in relief and rescue operations in the affected provinces and cities. The international community has not only praised Vietnam's efforts, but is also coming together to support the country in these efforts.
To address the aftermath of Typhoon Yagi and stabilize affected lives, the government has issued emergency support dispatches and allocated funds. Different sectors, local authorities, and functional forces have quickly undertaken recovery, rescue, and relief activities. The international community has highly praised these efforts by Vietnam.
The government took very decisive action to prepare, activating disaster response plans, different sectors activating their own disaster preparedness planning. The Ministry of Health, for example, issued directives to healthcare facilities to stockpile emergency supplies to be ready. All of those actions have helped to prevent further loss of life, even greater injury.
International organizations, including the UNDP, UNICEF, and WHO, are collaborating with the Vietnamese government to conduct field surveys and assess the damage and support needs in affected areas. Based on these assessments, specific and practical support plans will be developed.
Our key areas of interventions are to guarantee access to safe water, sanitation and hygiene, ensure that children and mothers continue to have access to health services and nutrition interventions, as well as investments in the sectors of education, child protection and humanitarian cash assistance for vulnerable families and children. In country, And in the region, we have prepositioned essential supplies, including hygiene kits, water purification tablet stands, educational kits that we can provide to affected communities upon needs.
From WHO's perspective, there are two key things to focus on right now. Number one is the damage to healthcare facilities. We're still assessing the extent of that, but once we understand that better, it'll be very important to make sure that we support healthcare facilities to be back up and running as quickly as possible. The second priority is preventing, to the extent possible, food and waterborne diseases.
Additionally, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations will work to ensure food security, cash, and livelihood recovery, and commit to aiding emergency situations in Vietnam.
Now, in response to natural disasters, severe storms and floods affecting several northern provinces and cities, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, along with Vietnamese representative agencies in China, engaged in discussions with Chinese authorities to propose measures aimed at reducing the risk of flooding in the Red River Basin. On the morning of September 10th, China reported that 2 hydroelectric plants upstream of the Red River would not initiate flood discharge and had no immediate plans to do so. These plants have ceased operations to prevent floods and accumulating water. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Vietnamese agencies will continue to collaborate with Chinese authorities to minimize the flow of upstream water from China into Vietnam, mitigating a flood-related damage. Additionally, on September 9th, China reported that 3 unidentified ships had drifted towards Vietnam. Both sides have since secured the vessels, ensuring no harm to infrastructure or traffic. Coming up next on VTV News. Top leader welcomes Lao Party General Secretary President in Hanoi. And Ministry of National Defense General Department of Technology celebrates 50th Traditional Day. Now moving on to other news, Party General Secretary and State President To Lam and his spouse hosted a red carpet welcome ceremony for General Secretary of the Lao People's Revolutionary Party, LPRP Central Committee, and President of Laos, Thongloun Sisoulith, and his spouse in Hanoi on September 10th. This marks President Sisoulith's second visit to Vietnam since the 11th National LPRP Congress in January 2021. Following up Party General Secretary To Lam's state visit to Laos as President of Vietnam in July 2024. The trip is considered a significant milestone in the history of bilateral ties, helping to elevate the two countries' great friendship, special solidarity, and comprehensive cooperation to new heights. This visit is expected to foster increasingly effective and practical relations, securing a prosperity for people in both nations. Nally Sisoulith, the spouse of General Secretary of the Lao People's Revolutionary Party, LPRP Central Committee, and President of Laos, Thongloun Sisoulith, now on a state visit to Vietnam, visited Ngo Thị Mận, the widow of late Party General Secretary Nguyen Trong, and offered incense at his residence on September 10th. Nally expressed her condolences over the passing of the late Party General Secretary, who devoted his whole life to the country and people, and wished his widow good health, luck, and peace. The two women had a friendly conversation and shared the beautiful memories they had when meeting in Vietnam and Laos. Ngo Thị Mận, the widow of late Party General Secretary Nguyen Trong, expressed her appreciation for the kindness and sincerity of Nally and offered her regards to Laos President Thongloun, his spouse Nally, and their family. Party General Secretary and State President To Lam presented the Ho Chi Minh Order to the Ministry of National Defense General Department of Technology on Tuesday morning. The ceremony celebrates the 50th traditional day on September 10th of the General Department of Technology.
At the ceremony, Party General Secretary and State President To Lam praised the department's outstanding achievements and significant contributions to the revolutionary cause of the party and the nation over the past 50 years. On the behalf of the party, State Central Military Commission, the top leader presented the Ho Chi Minh Order to the department for the third time. He emphasized that the department must continue their tasks on protecting the nation and booting the defense forces by ensuring optimum technical equipment. He also highlighted that in the new era, the military technical sector must lead in scientific and technological innovation, adopt the latest and most advanced achievements of human intellect, to advance Vietnam's military technology and contribute to the country's industrialization.
Speaker of the Federation Council of the Federal Assembly of the Russian Federation, Valentina Ivanova Matvienko, presided over an official welcome ceremony for visiting Vietnamese National Assembly Chairman Trần Thanh Mẫn in Moscow on the afternoon of September 9th, local time. The speaker noted that the Russia-Vietnam relationship has a 75-year history and has stood the test of time. In recent years, based on the efforts of high-ranking leaders of both countries, bilateral cooperation has been upgraded to a new level, a comprehensive strategic partnership. Following the talks, the Vietnamese National Assembly Chairman and Matvienko signed a cooperation agreement between the Vietnamese National Assembly and the Federation Council of the Federal Assembly of Russia. They also witnessed the signing of a cooperation deal between Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu Province and Rostov Oblast. Chairman of the Vietnamese National Assembly Trần Thanh Mẫn met with several party and local leaders of the Russian Federation on Tuesday during his ongoing official visit to Russia. More on this visit in the following story.
Vietnam, Russia. Further deepen economic and party relations. Receiving Chairman of the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, Gennady Zyuganov, National Assembly Chairman Tran Thanh Man affirmed that the party, state, and people of Vietnam are grateful for the valuable support of the people of the Russian Federation, previously the Soviet Union. He affirmed that Vietnam always considers the Russian Federation a leading important bilateral partner and asked the Communist Party of the Russian Federation further strengthen relations between the two countries' parties. Meeting with Sergei Mironov, chairman of the Fair Russia, Patriots for Truth Party, the Vietnamese leader proposed strengthening cooperation in political channels between the Communist Party of Vietnam. Meeting with the governor of the Rostov region, chairman of the Vietnamese National Assembly, spoke highly of Rostov's attention to enhancing cooperation in the economy, trade, education, culture, and tourism with Vietnam. He highlighted the newly signed agreement between the Russian region and Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu province during this visit. During the visit, National Assembly Chairman Tran Thanh Man also received several Vietnamese and Russian enterprises. He welcomes the investment worth $3 billion of Vietnamese enterprises in Russia. Receiving the leaders of the Gazprom Group, the Vietnamese leader affirmed that Vietnam always protects the legitimate rights of investors, ensuring stable and long-term operations for international enterprises in Vietnam.
Now, during an official visit to the U.S. at the invitation of Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin on the afternoon of September 8th, General Phan Van Giang, Politburo member, Deputy Secretary of the Central Military Commission, and the Minister of Defense held a phone talk with Patrick Leahy, former U.S. Senator, former President pro tempore of the U.S. Senate, and current Chairman of the Senate Appropriation Committee at the Vietnamese Embassy in Washington, D.C. General Phan Van Giang requested that the U.S. continue to prioritize accelerating the dioxin contamination remediation project at Bien Hoa Airport, support Vietnam in addressing dioxin contamination at Phu Quoc Airport, tackle the issue of unexploded ordnances, and provide information, documents, equipment, and technology for DNA testing to aid in the search for and identification of Vietnamese soldiers missing in action. Vietnam is committed to continuing a close cooperation with the U.S. in the efforts of finding U.S. soldiers who went missing in action during the war. Patrick Leahy affirmed that both he personally and many U.S. senators have a strong connection with Vietnam and are dedicated to contributing to the bilateral relationship. Coming up next in our world news, Harris and Trump to face off in the U.S. presidential debate. And Germany announces temporary border checks at all land borders. Now moving on to our world news, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris will debate for the first time at 9 p.m. on Tuesday, U.S. time. The presidential candidates are fighting to sway voters on the biggest stage in U.S. politics. Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic presidential candidate, and former President Donald Trump of the Republican Party will have a 90-minute debate at the Philadelphia National Constitution Center. Harris' focus is on making the Republican candidate lose his temper and his failures on the U.S. border wall and the COVID-19 pandemic. Polls show that after the June 27th debate, Trump secured an advantage over President Biden, even in the battleground states. However, Harris's unexpected presence has made the polls even closer. Polls suggest the Democratic vice president is now even in with the Republican former president in some swing states. Germany will set up temporary controls at all of its land borders in an attempt to curb irregular migration and tackle threats from terrorist groups, according to Interior Minister Nancy Faeser. Accordingly, the country will expand passport checks at all land border crossings, although all of its neighboring countries are members of the Schengen area. The area allows people to travel freely between those countries without a visa. Germany's measures are set to put a burden on the transport of goods within the bloc. However, Germany is committed to keeping the impact as low as possible. Chancellor Olaf Scholz's government is facing growing pressure to curb migrant numbers and crack down on extremists after a number of attacks. One suspect was accused of having links to the self-proclaimed Islamic State terrorist group. Chinese tech company Honor has developed technology that can detect so-called deepfake videos. This is an on-device feature, meaning users won't have to connect to the cloud to use it. The technology analyzes each frame of a video for inconsistencies and then delivers its verdict. Honor's AI deepfake detection feature is being demonstrated at the IFA Consumer Technology Show in Berlin. Before Honor, the U.S. corporation Microsoft also developed a tool to authenticate images and videos. Now, as usual, let's move on to the weather forecast. And that's all the news we have for this hour. To rewatch our program, you can download our mobile app VTVgo or check out our YouTube channel, VTV4Go. Thank you for watching and see you next time.